these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths. We hold these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
SITREP 19, thanks for joining me again as we cover the most interesting news from last week and arm you with the facts. So let's start with some of the obvious stuff. Israel, Iran, and the United States. The United States President Trump brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. It appears to be holding at the moment. This is after nearly 2 weeks of conflict, now known as the 12-day war. Both sides are claiming victory. Israel says it took out key Iranian military and nuclear figures. It did, of course. Iran launched a major missile response various times. And the U.S., of course, stepped in to finish the job using unique bunker buster strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. President Trump said Iran's program was obliterated. And now we're hearing that U.S.-Iran talks are showing some signs of progress. The president's goal being pretty basic: stability in the region and also reestablishing deterrence. And I'll get to that in a minute. Let's be clear, though. The Iranian regime's leadership is very fragile. Executions and power struggles are underway. And of course, we all know the Iranian people don't like their regime. So peace is obviously the first goal here. But we should never forget who we're dealing with. It's still the same regime. And I think our hope should be that the Iranian people get to choose their own future at some point. Now, also in big news, you probably heard about the leak of a classified DIA document, a document called a Battle Damage Assessment, or a BDA. Now, this BDA was interpreted by many of Trump's critics as essentially saying, hey, none of the targets were really damaged all that much. Now, that leak is under investigation by the FBI. It's a pretty serious crime. I have to say, because of my role in the Intelligence Committee and the fact that I have access to all of the intelligence on this topic, I have to refrain from going into detail here or speculating. I can say this for sure, just from my knowledge of being in the military and how these things work. It's impossible to be sure of anything when it comes to a BDA on a deeply buried target that cannot be accessed in person. It takes time to truly know the effects. The DIA the next day publicly stated after the leak happened that the document was in fact a low confidence assessment. Of course it was. It was only 24 hours after the strike. These facts were, of course, left out by many Democrats and journalists who cherry-picked the report in an attempt to smear the president's actions. Secretary Rubio made some very good points as well. The damage was not only significant, but strategically substantial in setting Iran's program back because they destroyed a specific facility that's required to turn enriched uranium into an actual bomb. Further confirming this, CIA Director John Radcliffe revealed that newly declassified intelligence points to the complete destruction of several key Iranian nuclear facilities. I can also say this: the true achievement here is the action itself. The action itself, whether it destroyed all or none of a facility like the Fordow facility, what it did was reestablish strategic deterrence and dominance against Iran. President Trump made it clear that even getting close to a nuclear bomb would result in the full might of the American military. That is the true achievement. This is the strength part when we talk about peace through strength. And of course, related to that, President Trump then was on his way to Europe for the NATO summit. On Tuesday, June 24th, President Trump attended the NATO summit in The Hague, Netherlands. This high-stakes gathering comes at a pretty pivotal moment for this alliance. The central item on the agenda was an historic agreement by all 32 NATO member states to commit to raising their defense spending to 5% of GDP by the year 2035. That's a dramatic shift in posture meant to meet rising global threats head on. Now, critics have often tried to portray President Trump as antagonistic and even anti-NATO. The reality on the ground told a pretty different story. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's from the Netherlands, he openly praised President Trump for delivering what he called a long overdue reckoning with the alliance. He said, quote, President Trump made Europe pay in a big way. Rutte also credited the president with, quote, doing something no American president in decades could get done. He said Trump is a man of strength and peace, citing his swift strategic military action against Iran's nuclear infrastructure and his role in securing a U.S. brokered ceasefire that is still holding. Now back to home, Supreme Court upholds third country deportations. The Supreme Court just gave the Trump administration a major green light to restart third country deportations. That restores one of the most important enforcement tools in our immigration arsenal. On Monday, June 23rd, the court lifted a judicial blockade that had been stopping the administration from removing migrants to countries other than their country of origin. That nationwide stay was put in place back in April by a Boston-based federal judge, Brian Murphy, who claimed the administration wasn't giving migrants enough advance notice of where they'd be sent or enough time to file fear-based claims. The Supreme Court wasn't buying it. In a 6-3 decision, they reversed the injunction and confirmed what we've been saying all along: strong enforcement is both lawful and necessary. But the story doesn't end there. Apparently, Judge Murphy is openly defying the Supreme Court, issuing a new court order claiming his nationwide stay remains in full effect, even after the Supreme Court ruled. I'm not sure how that works. Obviously, nobody has to listen to it. Attorney General Pam Bondi's chief of staff at the DOJ didn't hold back, calling it an Article 2 or Article 3 insurrection. The Department of Justice is absolutely right. There's no single district judge has the authority to override the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and the separation of powers. I'm sure this will be sorted out in short order, but the way it's sorted out, I think, is the administration can move forward with its deportations. Let's talk for a second about why deportation to third countries as opposed to country of origin is even a thing. It comes down to two major factors. It's something called non-refoulement and readmission agreements. Non-refoulement is the illegal principle that you can't send someone back to a country where they claim they'll face persecution. That's why programs like Remain in Mexico existed, to keep migrants out of the U.S. while those claims were vetted. And not surprisingly, the Biden administration ditched that policy and they let everybody in. And then you've got also readmission agreements. These are formal agreements between countries to repatriate their own nationals. Sounds simple, but of course it isn't, because it depends on the country. And a lot, like Venezuela, for instance, refused to take people back for years. There's some method to their madness there. They actually wanted their dissidents to leave, so it makes it easier when they want to rig their elections. Earlier this year, though, Trump was able to strike a limited agreement to resume those removals with Venezuela in particular. But the bottom line, if someone breaks our laws and their home country won't take them back, we need the flexibility to send them somewhere else. That's just common sense, not cruelty. The Supreme Court ruling restores that flexibility and signals that the administration is getting serious again about actually enforcing immigration law. We're not going to let activist judges tie their hands. In New York, not such great news. Democratic Socialist defeated Cuomo in this NYC primary for mayor. So the Democrats just nominated a self-described socialist over their former governor, and it wasn't even close. Zohran Mamdani. He's a state legislator, member of the Democratic Socialists of America. He defeated Andrew Cuomo in Tuesday's primary. Mamdani ran on a far-left platform. You can guess what it is. Freeze rents, make the buses free, raise taxes on anyone he thinks is rich, even launched city-owned grocery stores. Cuomo, who carried the support of your typical Democrat establishment, Clinton world, he positioned himself as a centrist in the race, but conceded Tuesday night. Said tonight is his night, and he conceded to his opponent. And the results were pretty dramatic. Mamdani pulled in 43.5% of the vote. Cuomo came in with 36.4%. It was a tough race. Cuomo brought plenty of baggage into the race, of course. Remember, he resigned as governor in 2021 after multiple sexual harassment allegations. But his loss is also revealing of where the energy lies within today's Democratic Party. It's not necessarily with moderates. It's with activists pushing the government deeper into every corner of your life. So pray for New York, but it's not over yet. Remember, they have the current mayor, Eric Adams, did not run in the Democrat primary. He is running as an independent. So there's still a chance. Pray for New York. It's a great city until it's governed by socialists. Now, on to here in Washington, D.C., and I've been put on the big mad list because of this. I'll explain here shortly. So the Senate Parliamentarian goes rogue on One Big Beautiful Bill. The Senate Parliamentarian just ruled that several key provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill violate reconciliation rules and must be removed. Now, I'm big mad because that includes my amendment to block Medicaid funds from being used for transgender surgeries. A provision to prevent, I'm mad about that because like 90% of people agree with that. And it's perfectly within the rules of reconciliation. It didn't stop there, though. The parliamentarian also removed a provision to prevent unauthorized migrants from accessing Medicaid or CHIP. Again, a common sense thing that absolutely has a budgetary effect and should not have been removed. She also removed reforms that we had to Medicaid provider tax schemes, among other things. The problem here, and what we're seeing, and why I've called for her to be fired, is consistency and application of the Senate rules. When it was Democrats' turn to pass a bill through reconciliation, the parliamentarian let some pretty interesting things slide. But when it's Republicans' turn, the parliamentarian seems to change her rules or her standards. A couple of things I might note. McDonough let Democrats do. She allowed a $50 million grant program for environmental justice, whatever that means. It's a new program, it's a new policy, but denied my prohibition on Medicaid funds for transgender surgeries because it didn't have a direct enough budget impact. Of course, that's not true. It had a $2.5 billion budget impact, according to the CBO. She let Democrats pass dozens of Green New Deal grant programs and the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, that's new policy, but ruled against Republican energy provisions like renewable energy fees and natural gas import licensing fees, which are directly related to budgetary concerns. Anything that is fee or tax related or spending related, it should be within the reconciliation rules. She also greenlit $27 billion for a green bank at the EPA, which was just a brand new regulatory financing arm, but struck conservative Medicaid reforms that would have actually saved us money. And by the way, not cut people off Medicaid. There's a lot more provisions she hasn't even ruled on yet, but the pattern's pretty clear. If a Democrat wants to advance an ideological priority, the budget impact is suddenly direct. If a Republican wants to rein in spending or limit abuse, suddenly it's not germane to the bill. The problem is bigger. For me, the problem is really bigger than these parts of the bills that she's striking. We'll figure out how to get those done eventually. If this fails here, the problem is it's a lopsided application of the rules that govern this institution, and it's from an authority figure who really should be a respected, objective, nonpartisan judge. Hence my call for her to be fired. And this wouldn't be unprecedented. Robert Dove, the Senate Parliamentarian in 2001, was dismissed over his inconsistencies in rulings on tax and budget matters, and I think it's worth thinking about doing it now. Other developing headlines, here's a few other quick ones. Number one, there's a tropical storm. Andrea is the first named system of 2025. It's expected to be above normal, 6 to 10 hurricanes, 3 to 5 of which are expected to become major. Number two, Florida's Attorney General is proposing turning an Everglades airport into a 39-square-mile migrant detention center dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, which is kind of funny. Probably the only reason we decided to put this in the news for you. Number three, after the Department of Homeland Security issued a threat alert in response to the Iran strikes, ICE apprehended 11 Iranians with terror links. Obviously, that's problematic. We've had an open border for a long time, and there's grave concern about potential sleeper cells. I would also tell you that I think we've never been better prepared for it from an intelligence perspective and our ability for the FBI to root out, and ICE to root out some of these problems, and they've been doing a great job. But you have to remain vigilant, and 4 years of an open border does come with it problems. Last headline. President Trump granted TikTok a third 90-day extension after Congress passed a law last year requiring ByteDance, which is the Chinese company that owns the app, to either divest or face a ban. So the purpose of this extension is to, again, hope for an American buyer and hope that TikTok will sell to an American buyer, which then means it won't be banned. That was the whole point of that legislation. Otherwise, you have a Chinese-owned system that can effectively collect your data and, more importantly, maybe in times of conflict, effectively show 150 million users in America exactly what the Chinese government wants them to see, which is a scary thought. Now, if you read nothing else, try this one out. It's from Karen Elliott House. It's from Karen Elliott House, the Wall Street Journal. She wrote, "U.S. credibility returns to the Middle East." Give it a read. It's a good read on the primary and secondary effects of President Trump's actions to take out Iran's nuclear program and what the future may hold for the region. That's all. Thanks.